very much sincerely for not just being here right now, but really for all that you have done, are doing, and will do. Let's just pray real quick and ask the Lord's blessing on our time. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father, especially today on this great feast that we celebrate of all the saints, as we call to mind our true homeland and those men and women who have given us such extraordinary examples of what's possible when we cooperate with your grace. We thank you for the opportunity to serve our brothers and sisters at this parish, in this community, at this time. We ask that in your great mercy you would be kind and pour out the gift of your Holy Spirit upon us today, that you would continue to increase within me and within all of us the heart of your Son. And that especially that every person who encounters us somehow, by your grace, might see Jesus. And we ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen. How many people have gone through Alpha? So, does that mean twice? More than twice. 3 times. So, just yesterday we had the Alpha retreat, great retreat again. We had about 330 folks or so, including 50 or so people from St. Louis Parish. And if you remember the Alpha retreat, there's always a couple of comments that Nikki's always kind of funny, but there's 2 things that just jumped out at me as I was thinking about us today. So in one of the talks, he's talking about how this one woman's talking to a man who had been at a parish for, 60 years. And she said to him, "Wow, you must have seen a lot of change." And his comment was, "Yes, and I have resisted every single one of them." And then he tells the story about the one pastor who wanted to move the piano from one side of the sanctuary to the other. But as he puts it, he knew something like that, such a radical change couldn't happen without resistance. So he just moved it a foot at a time. And in the course of about a year, it got moved. We laugh. And yet, right? So you'll hear this a number of times, I know, from Mike, but everybody tells us, we got to hear something 7 times for it to sink in. Maybe if there's a distinction to make in the course of the day, it's radical hospitality, not radical change. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to bring about radical change. We are trying to bring about radical hospitality. And there's a set of reasons for that. One of them is it's one of our core values, in the sense of one of our core values is that we are incessant tinkerers. So what does that mean? It means that we're always trying to take something that's good and make it better. If it's great, we want to make it the best. Always. So I'm always critiquing me. So are you. I hear it all the time. You critique one another. We critique everything. But oftentimes our critiques aren't done quite candidly, in a spirit of fraternity, in a spirit of charity. What we want to do is do a critique in charity of, I'm trying to do that with people who I trust and just say, hey, what went well, what didn't go well, what can I do better? And so we're kind of doing something similar with all of our ministries right now. We're just trying to figure out how we can take what is already an amazingly dynamic parish and make it ever better. And so that's how this fits into really what we're trying to do as a whole parish. And there's a couple of experiences that I had recently, some here and some elsewhere, that I just wanted to kind of put in our minds quickly. Joe and I and 3 or 4 other folks from the parish had an opportunity to go to a conference out in California. When was that? March, April, somewhere around there. And it wasn't that useful, the conference, quite frankly, but we had a chance to go to visit Saddleback. And Saddleback Church, if you're familiar with Rick Warren, is Rick Warren's church. So, first of all, it's Southern California. It's an outdoor campus. The outdoor seating was larger than the indoor seating. Palm trees, beautiful furniture. It was just really insane. The campus is literally bigger than Disneyland. But the two things stuck out to me when we walked in. The first was we were walking up the steps, and this place is a maze. I mean, so it's not obvious where you're going. Kind of like here, for that matter, because we have so many different entrances. But we were walking up these steps, and we were trying to find, I forget what we were trying to find, there was a young girl. She couldn't have been more than 14 or 15. And she was serving as one of the ministers of hospitality, or whatever they call theirs. And we asked her a question, and she didn't say, it's over there. She said, I can take you there if you want, just come with me. And so we walked, and we walked like 500 yards. I mean, we walked. And there was no sense of put out, there was no sense of, it was just, I'm ecstatic you're here. It's great that you're with us. And this was a little girl. And then we walked into the actual arena, because they don't have a sanctuary really. And there was a whole set of, ushers and whatnot. And I don't know how to describe this other than to say that we were made to feel unbelievably welcomed and yet not smothered. And sometimes, you can go to places and you feel that way. It wasn't radically hospitable, they were just smothering you. It's like, just leave me alone, will you? I just want to find a seat. But these people were really gracious, really kind, very friendly, tons of smiles. They didn't feel fake. And those are the only two things that I remember about that experience. Was that little girl and that usher who went out of his way both to say, hey, do you guys need a place? And we said, actually, no, we just want to stand right now. He's like, cool, no problem. If you want a seat, I'm right here. You just let me know. That's what I remember from that day. I'd suggest that that's significant. I don't remember anything Rick Warren said. I remember the greeters at a church which is renowned for one of the best preachers in the country. Do you think that you can have that same impact? Please do. The impact that we have, that you have in this ministry can make all the difference in the world between whether or not someone will come back or whether they won't. In the same way that, there's three really significant things, that the Eucharist is the most significant thing that we have, obviously. But most people don't know that. It takes a long time to get there. What impresses people right away is how they're received at the door. Because we want to be always mindful of the fact that most of the people, here's my perception, most of the people who are coming to church on Sunday in a Catholic church don't really want to be there. They really don't. They don't wake up and go, I can't wait to go to Mass. Some do, most don't. Something has to happen in their lives. They haven't had the encounter yet with the person of Jesus. And they'll tell you that. So they go, and they go, faithfully, they go dutifully, they go out of obligation, they go for whatever reason. But they don't go because they can't wait to go. So there has to be a set of things that kind of ease them into a place where they get to that place where they go, I can't wait to go to Mass. And the three things I would suggest that make all the difference in the world are how they're greeted at the door, what the worship's like, and what the preaching's like. When all three of those things are excellent, then the church just swells. When one of those is not good, we know the result. Lousy preaching can send everybody away. Lousy music can send people away. And lousy hospitality can make people just go, wow, what a cool church. We have places in our area which draw so many people because they're just known to be really hospitable without being smothering. So when we talk about doing this radical hospitality, that's really all we're trying to strive for. We just want, just like I'm trying to look at what we're doing musically right now, and I'm always looking at, you know, what I'm doing as a priest in terms of preaching, and I'm always trying to critique it and figure out how can I do better and how can we do better musically. So in doing this kind of an event today, it's not some massive indictment like, gosh, we're just doing it all wrong. That's not it at all. We're doing well. How can we do it phenomenally? And I think Mike and Jeff and Annette together, the three of them, I just want to thank the three of you for stepping up in the ways that you can really help us do that. Maybe just a last comment. How many of you volunteered for the St. Maria Goretti? How many didn't? I just want to see the contrast. Okay. So 2 quick things about that. It was funny, I was standing inside the door. It was about maybe 2:30, so it was still kind of early in the day. I think, I want to say visitation, but that's not the right word. But people started coming in about 1, and some woman walks up to me at one point and she says, wow, Father, I can't believe this is a Catholic church. Like, I walked in and I didn't think I was in a Catholic church just because of the way everybody was greeting me and the hospitality that I got and the warmth and the friendliness, and then I saw you. And I went, thanks. I think I know what you mean by that, unfortunately. And I know what she meant by that. She meant 2 things. So, but it's just an experience that we just recently had that I think we're probably going to allude to oftentimes when we start talking about what we mean by radical hospitality. That day was radical hospitality. I cannot tell you how many letters I have gotten since that day from people not in our parish and not in our state, but in other states who came. People from Indiana, people from Illinois, people from Wisconsin, people from Ohio, people from Pennsylvania, who happened to be in the area that day. They don't know us from Adam. And they took the time to not write an email, to write a letter. And the main purpose of the letter was to say, I just want to tell you to tell your brothers and sisters at Our Lady Good Counsel that their hospitality was unbelievable. That's what they left with. Even more than Maria Goretti. They were there in the presence of a saint, and they went home talking about those people showed us an example of what it is we can be when we come to church. When we start talking about radical hospitality, not radical change, what we want to try to do is have every single Mass and every single event be that kind of an experience. So I'm always talking to the priests saying, guys, it's so obvious, right? I mean, it's all about the weekend. That's where we see our parish. That's where we encounter everybody. We can't not strive to make Sunday where we invest all of our time, all of our energy. Don't ever do this as a formality. Don't ever do this rotely. Always do it like it's the first time you've ever done it, and it might be the last time you've ever done that. Now, whether we do that or not is a different story. But it's always the bar I'm trying to get us to strive for. Same with everybody in every ministry, and today especially for us. That's the goal we want to have. Our goal should be, I want people walking out here going, wow, that is an amazingly friendly parish, family, and I can't wait to go back. So thanks for being such a big part of that. For however long you've been a part, thanks for being willing to go through what we want to do now. And thanks in advance for what's going to come. I think we're already good, and I think God wants to bring us to extraordinary. So deeply grateful. Thanks.
Now I'm going to hand it over to Mike Mies, our new head of ushers, and we're going to start the hospitality training. Here you go.
All right, thank you. So maybe a round of applause, 1 for being here, and 2 for everybody who volunteered at the St. Maria Goretti event. If we can clap for all of you all. What that tells us right away is we get it and we can do it. And one of the themes in some of my points in discussion will be what if, what if we did things differently? So on that day, we did things a little bit differently. Certainly we had more manpower, so it was easier, but we'll discuss some ways in how do we get there? How does this room become double, where we're sitting over there next time we do one of these? Just by way of introduction, so I've been in the parish for 7-8 years. I've got 3 little ones and one on the way any minute, literally, which is why my phone's right here. So this could be a short meeting. Be nice to everybody, I'm out of here. I'm a family guy, I live here, I'm becoming more active, but in business I've been in hospitality for 15 years or so, in companies I've built and then consulting for organizations, parishes, nonprofits, Quicken Loans. It's interesting when you're a Dan Gilbert what you can do in hospitality, right? But we're going to push ourselves to figure out how do we get there. What are the things that we can do differently? And we're going to start seeing things differently. That's sort of the objective. Father had some humorous comments about change and moving the piano over just a little bit. And we kind of giggle because that's not us, None of us are afraid of change. Organizationally, it's uncomfortable to do that. So we want to start seeing things a little bit differently. What do we see when we see this logo? And you can call it out, what do we see? The arrow. Who saw the arrow? Okay, 3 or 4 or 5. Anybody not see the arrow right now? Where's the arrow, right? We've seen this logo collectively a million times. This logo is everywhere, right? Did you hear that? Oh. That's what we want to do when we start pushing ourselves, seeing hospitality differently. We need that, oh, okay, I get it. I see it differently now, right? This is a more common one. What's different in this Baskin-Robbins? 31, right? These are the things that once you see for the first time and you get it, you can't unsee it. Much like radical hospitality. Once we get it, there's no going back. Amazon. Somebody said it here. Right? It's a smile, right? And it's everything from A to Z.
Right.
I know that because my wife keeps them in business. Single-handedly, I think. We probably don't see this one that often, but the Pittsburgh Zoo.
Oh, yeah, you see the animals.
Yeah, you see a gorilla and a lion, right? There's I think a hippopotamus at the bottom. There's birds in there. There's an image of Father John somewhere in the back coming out, So we're seeing these things a little bit differently. So that would be my challenge. Father said it very well. We're not doing a bad job. I love coming to church here. I know very few people who come to church and say, they're rude. Man, good counsel is mean. But what can we do to get there just a little bit differently, a little bit higher? How do we raise the bar? Because in business, when I talk to people, I say you're either phenomenal or you're forgotten, right? How do we take the mundane and make it memorable? Now, church for us isn't mundane. We're here. But Father mentioned it too. I mean, a lot of people, it is just sort of a mundane experience. And I'm glad to hear that Father is acknowledging his preaching. So I think Dale Carnegie course coming up or something, he's upping his game, We're all looking at those things. But the 3 things that Father mentioned, the preaching, the music, and the hospitality, we're responsible for that here, right? We can take a big part of that because they're going to receive the Eucharist, right? They come here, they're going to receive the Eucharist, they're going to hear the word. But it's interesting if the other 3 things are what's keeping people here and happy. So we're going to focus on our ability to provide service excellence as a fundamental to living in this parish, right? As a requisite for what we do as volunteers. And then to identify the fundamentals of service excellence and what are those specific points that will help us deliver radical hospitality, and then to make sure it's sustainable, right? There are things that we can do when we answer the what if questions that may or may not be sustainable, but we ought to be pushing ourselves towards a sustainable model that really will be radical on a daily basis, every Mass, every time. There's been some talk and some feedback we've received on, radical change, right? versus radical hospitality. But what it means to be radical is relating or affecting the fundamental nature of something far-reaching or thorough, right? And we know that hospitality is the friendly and generous reception of entertainment of guests and visitors or strangers. A lot of the parallels we can talk about and we'll discuss, and Jeff will discuss, and we will moving forward even after today, is when we talk about service excellence and radical hospitality, I like to kind of keep it simple because it gets kind of hectic when we talk about a big campus or a big parish. But if we think about it in terms of having people over our house, right? If you're having a house party, what are those things that we're doing that seem very basic when 8 or 10 people come over, but when it's 800 people, we somehow kind of forget about it and it becomes less important? Jeff, did you want to talk a little bit about some of the feedback you've received and some of the fears and kind of address some of that?
Yeah, sure. So, like Father had mentioned, we're not talking about radical change. We're talking about finding ways to get to radical hospitality. And that will mean we'll have small incremental changes. And we're gonna try to do some things different, as we talked about being incessant tinkerers. We're not going to, stand pat with the status quo. So there will be some things that, we're gonna need to change in order to get to where we wanna be. And we look forward to your guys' support in making those changes and buying in and helping us pull everyone along so we can get to that spot of, radical hospitality. And we're gonna look for your input and for your feedback. And once we make that decision though, we really are gonna look for all of you to support the change if we make it and to get us to that spot of radical hospitality. So some people hear radical and they're thinking, oh my gosh, we're changing everything. We're gonna dress up as clowns at the front door. We gotta make people laugh. Well, that's not it. We're looking for small changes that can make a really big difference. So I just want to kind of try to put a couple people's fears, at ease, because we're not looking to do radically different things. We're just looking to do radical hospitality. So.
Thanks, Jeff. And one of the things I think we should focus on as an organization is the difference between compromising and having consensus, right? And typically when we compromise, when we make changes, somebody's losing, somebody's giving up, right? And they're saying, well, fine, I'll do that. And you get some of this malicious obedience. Well, I'll move the piano a foot, but it's never gonna work, that type of thing. Consensus is different because while maybe I don't see the value in it, at least the group does and I see the momentum. So with consensus, we're gonna move forward and not complain too much because I had to compromise or give something up. In all of our departments or groups or ministries, I can separate our roles into two distinct categories. One is the functional aspect of what we do, and the other is the emotional. Today we're talking about, in this part of the discussion, the emotional side of what we do, the connection. Functionally, it's very different. So I just got introduced as the head of the ushers, and I'm wildly available to do that, and my resume reads very well as an usher because today at the noon mass I had my first ever experience as being an usher. So I didn't know anything functionally what to do, although I've been going to church my whole life. Those are the things that we have to do. We have to know how to do those things. And in all of our ministries, there's things we just have to do and you have to know how to do them. That's the functional side of what we do. The emotional side is why we're here and what we're focusing on. So I'm interested in general feedback right now on why we're here and why any one of us has volunteered for the ministry that you're in. Would anybody like just to share why you chose to be a part of this?
Not everyone all at once.
Yes.
I wanted to change the way this parish is perceived because I've been in the parish a long time and it hasn't always been a friendly place.
Okay.
For me personally, I'm just speaking for myself. So I want to be part of that change.
Right. So you want to be part of the change because you had experience that we can do better and you want to be a part of the better.
Right.
Okay. Why else did somebody volunteer to be here? And not here specifically, but in your ministry.
Jeff was very compelling at the pulpit a few weeks ago.
Good. Very good.
Yeah.
Good. So he asked you, right, in a way that was compelling, right? Another way we're going to find, to add more tables here, he asked and he came to you. Anybody else? There's a couple other hands over here. Yes, in the pink?
To give back, because
parish gives so much to me and to my
To
life.
give back?
I'm one of those people who wakes up and looks forward to Mass.
Awesome.
I absolutely love it.
Awesome. And in general, what are the requirements to be a volunteer?
Smile.
Yeah, show up, time, right? Yeah, and to be willing. And why is this important? One, we know we need volunteers, and we know we need a lot of them, and we need the right ones who are willing and who are moving towards radical hospitality. But one of the things that I'll contend to, and we didn't say this, but as an organization, if we have volunteers, or typically leaders or people who raise their hand are confident, and in a parish they feel accepted, and this is your home, right? I don't think anybody here would say, I don't feel that this is where I belong, this is not my home. One thing I want us to remember and to focus is that that's not true of the majority of people, probably, and I think Father mentioned this as well, that are coming through our doors. They're anxious, they probably feel they're on the outside. That's why this room isn't bigger than it is right now. And they feel like they're visiting our homes, right? So they're coming here to visit you, to go to church, and to be a part of the experience. That's a fairly significant burden then, right? So what is our impact? I've never met somebody who says, hi, my name's Jeff and I'm rude. Or, yeah, you want to work with my group? We've got 10 people in it, but most of us aren't friendly. People don't typically think that they're an unfriendly person. There's all these people that are, if you get to know Joe Giordano, he's actually not that bad of a guy, which is true. You get to know him, he's a great guy. But as service providers, we don't really have the opportunity in a 10-second interaction with someone where they can leave and say, I bet you if I gave her a little bit more time, she'd probably be nice, a good ambassador of the parish. Our impact is significant because we're not in the business here of writing mortgages, right? Or selling cars. We're in the business of saving souls. So we are the first and last impression of this parish. So this greeter here, this impact here, looks more like this to somebody who's coming to our parish, right? And we won't be given the benefit of the doubt to the individual that's anxious, on the outside, not feeling like they belong, because they're looking for that one excuse to say, well, see, that's why I don't go to church, because you know what, they just, I couldn't get in the pew, they didn't help me, and then, he kind of rolled his eyes, and why do they block off that one section? See, our impact is absolutely significant. So each one of these groups, right, each one of these groups is Our Lady of Good Counsel. We know that because we're here. But as I mentioned, the burden is great because for those who are deciding how active they want to be in our church, if they want to stay here, if they want to bring their kids here, it looks a little bit more like this to them, right? And I know people in my life that feel like this. And we all do, right? We've counseled people, we've met people, we've prayed for people that feel like, I just don't know if I can do it. That is a huge mountain, and I'm just weak, anxious. So if we all acknowledge that we're truly in the business of saving souls, and that we're ambassadors to the community for Our Lady of Good Counsel, it's extremely significant, right? And in as much as it's difficult to give this time, I hope that we can start seeing things like those logos in a different way. And then collectively in our individual ministries, we can start kind of providing feedback to each other, being open to receiving feedback and saying, what could we be doing differently to enhance the experience? Because we want more people here, right? We want more people, not just to go to church, right? But to be part of the church. I have a system. I like to think of 5 specific things when we talk about how to deliver service excellence or radical service or radical hospitality. And that's being friendly, anticipating needs, providing information, respecting the individuals we serve, and being aware of our environment. And we heard a little bit about some of these specific points when we sort of self-identified what service excellence looks like. One of the issues or comments you hear a lot is, well, I am friendly. Like, I am friendly. What are you talking about? I am friendly. We'll have to edit this part later, Joe, but my brother, I won't use his name because he's my older brother, and I'm the second born, so I wouldn't want to give away exactly which brother. But my older brother swears that he's a friendly guy, and he's a great guy. He knows and loves the Lord. He volunteers a lot. He's in education, and he loves children. But his friendly is not all that different from like, oh my gosh, I just got a tax bill that I wasn't expecting. You know? You're like, hey, brother, you know, how's everything going? Oh, great. Yeah, I just won the lotto. It's just awesome, you know. But he's got this resting face that just makes him look upset, right? And we were talking about this a long time ago, and he's like, I'm not unfriendly. I said, you're not unfriendly by like your actions or what you do, but you look unfriendly. You're not like the guy I want opening the door at our church, right? And he said, I actually greet all the parents when they come into my school. I was like, you need a different job. Maybe you can like go around like at lunch with a tray or something. That's not for you. But you can measure friendly, right? All of us here measure friendly, you know, from what we call a third-party perspective, right? From 20 feet away, you don't have to be in somebody else's conversation to measure friendly or to see friendly. You can also hear friendly, can't we? So we've all been on the receiving end of a phone call when somebody is very happy that you called and very empathetic for your call, and they'll do everything they can to solve your problems. And you just know it's not sincere, right? And you know that it's one of these two people. You want the one on the right, right? Because you can hear a smile, you can feel that compassion. But we've all been on the other side. So being aware of that in our tone, in our action, it's extremely significant because when we're the recipient, we certainly feel a certain way. But oftentimes we're on our default, right? Our autopilot. Not having the ability to, you know, give and receive feedback like, am I friendly? Do I come across friendly? What does that actually look like? So there are some very objective and measurable things that we can think about and encourage others as we're coaching and recruiting. You know, are we making eye contact? Are we smiling? What's our posture? And are we focused on the individuals we serve? So I look very different delivering a message to you today like this, right? This looks like, you know, I can't wait to get out of here, my baby's coming soon, which, you know, might be happening, but we're good. Versus being here and being engaged, right? Having your hands crossed, you know, and kind of talking with, you know, the other usher or greeter and sort of focusing like, you know, hey Jeff, yeah, what'd you do? Hey, yeah, welcome, how you doing? You know, that type of thing is not quite what friendly looks like, right? It's not being rude necessarily. And the power of a smile, it's actually difficult to smile like when you're not in the mood to smile, you know? And we've heard the psychology behind why that happens and how it can actually change your behavior smiling, right? So maybe we should all, like, before our duty, like, go into the bathroom and smile for a little bit. But we recognize it on the other end, right? We recognize what this looks like. But the challenge, and my challenge to you, is to look at yourself and say, okay, you know, where do I up my game? Because it's about the inches. It's not about the radical change, right? It's about the hospitality becoming radical in inches that in aggregate creates a much better experience. So part of being friendly is the words we choose to use, right? We are sincere creatures of habit, and we all sort of have that default word. You know, how are you doing today, honey? Fine. If I hear my wife tell me she's doing fine, I know she's not fine, right? And if she says I'm doing great, that's significantly different. But as service providers, we need to think about the words we're using in our interactions with the individuals we serve. So one common reply to a thank you, you know, when you help somebody, is no problem, right? If we think about that, that's like extremely a knee-jerk reaction. You know, you help somebody, you hold the door, oh, no problem. It's not rude, but what's the difference between saying no problem and my pleasure? Right? I see some heads nodding. Does that feel different?
Yes.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
But the autopilot is, no problem, you know? Hey, thanks for grabbing that for me, no problem. Then you kind of think, should it have been a problem? Didn't expect it to be a problem. Was it a problem? Oh, now I feel bad, you know? My pleasure is significantly different. I was asked this by somebody and didn't mean any harm, you know, a few years ago. Are you new? Well, I was new to that mass because I don't typically go to that mass. And it wasn't rude, and he was trying to be polite because he introduced himself, right? But are you new versus I don't believe I've met you yet is a little bit different. Does that feel a little bit better, right? I don't believe I've had the opportunity to meet you yet. You know, my name's Mike. It's a little thing, but that's that moving the piano just a little bit, right? Do you need help with that? It also seems friendly. If you see someone, maybe, you know, a mother getting her stroller, you know, do you need help with that? The default for that question, 9 times out of 10 is, oh, I'm all set, I do it all the time. I promise you that's the default. But I'll help you with that as you engage the individual is much more powerful. Much more powerful. Sure, right? That's a common one, you know? Would you mind helping me with this? Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I'm here, right? So as I see head nodding, you know, this is a very common, and this is life, right? I mean, we all have the common themes, the common words, those knee-jerk sort of responses. So again, the challenge as we're raising the bar is to just in the quiet of your mind as you're driving or as you're talking to individuals and you hear those knee-jerk, sort of your go-to response to common questions and common interactions is what could I do to sharpen that saw a little bit? How do I just up it just a little bit? So then in being friendly in a service business, at most you get 30 seconds. Jeff and I were talking a little bit about this, and that's at most, because if you're a greeter or in most hospitalities, you don't get 10 or 15 seconds because people are coming and going. The opportunity, though, is this: how many other times there are to engage individuals, like Dan mentioned earlier, when you're not on, right? My duty's over. I've served my post and now I sit down for mass or at a function because I did functionally what I was supposed to do. But I'm still an ambassador of the church, right? I'm still a minister in the hospitality group of the church. So in those interactions with individuals, I contend that we have to have a solid greeting, introduce yourself by name, find common ground, which, you know, is something as easy as the weather, right? That's a common one. If there's children involved, just something about the children. A fond farewell, and then using that individual's name again. I think it was you who shared this with your interactions, right? And you kind of did this when you shared your positive experience, was they were nice to you, they greeted you well, they introduced themselves, they chatted with you, and then they said goodbye and used your name. Typically, we do some of these things and we're sort of friendly, but in the spirit of being radical, we've got to hit it all, right? The challenge is, how do we do this, Jeff, you know, and do we expect this out of every position, every time, all the time?
Yeah, and like Mike said, we've talked about this. You know, if you're a greeter or if you're an usher, you may have 5 seconds with someone. You may not get that long, but it really doesn't take that long to give someone a smile. Or if they're walking with a child and they're wearing a backpack. Hey, great backpack, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I love that. The kid smiles, the parents smile, they remember that. They're smiling as they walk into church. You know, or hey, you know, Michigan, great game, or bad game, or you know, Michigan State, or Lions. Yeah, no, thank you. You know, but you guys are all laughing. It took me, you know, 3 words, and you've made a connection with someone. They're happy. And that's all it takes. It's really quite simple if we think about it a little bit. To, as the people are walking through the door, the kids, every kid now loves fist bumping. You know, so you hold your fist out like this and they're gonna bump. You know, you blow it up and they laugh. You know, they think it's hilarious. It's really easy. Now you're smiling, they're smiling, the parents are happy, life is good. We've done what we set out to do. We've been the face of Christ to that person walking through the door. And now they're more at ease at our house. They're walking into our house, they're feeling a little bit more at home. Then, the ushers are helping them sit down, and the ushers are greeting the people, and it's, same thing. It's every single person. It's greeters, it's ushers, it's coffee and donuts, it's new parishioner welcome. It's really quite easy, to make just a quick connection with them, and you've welcomed them into our house. And now they can sit down and they can experience the love of Christ, and we can welcome that in, we can usher them into a place where they can have that radical encounter with Jesus. And that's what we're all here to do. That's, if we think about these people, we're Jesus to them as they walk through the doors. And if we keep that in our minds, it's really easy to smile at someone as they walk through the door. It doesn't matter what kind of day you're having. If you think, I might be the only time that these people encounter Jesus, it makes it a lot more easy to, well, they scowled at me, I'm not gonna, say hi to them as they leave. Well, who knows what they're going through? Let's be Jesus to them. So in 3 to 5 seconds, you can have a huge impact on that person's day. You could turn their whole day around. So.
Yeah, and as Jeff mentioned, the key there is that connection, that common ground, whatever it is, and then using the names. So we talked about anticipating needs, and a few of the other, that was Dan again too. That's probably one that is a little bit of a stretch, or maybe one that's the most stretch for us. Because in anticipating needs, oftentimes it's, well, we don't have enough people to do these things. We don't have the ability to, shovel snow because we only have 3 volunteers and we have to do that. So part of our commitment and the commitment of the leadership is that we need more people, we have to get people. We're asking you in a special way to recruit more people so that we can push ourselves and stretch ourselves and say, what if? What if when, and I hope it's not coming, but what if our parking lot looked like that on a winter day? Wouldn't it be amazing?
Could be next weekend, right?
Bite your tongue, Jeffrey. Could be. But what if when everybody left Mass, that they went outside, at 11:07 and all the snow was off their windshields? Would that be amazing? Now, we could have done it at the St. Maria Garage event because we had 12 guys out there. And you can do those things, right? You stay on it, you do it all through the Mass. It takes manpower. It takes a lot of help. It takes something radical. That's the point. So the other challenge here is, as we keep asking, what if we did this? Or what could we do this? Maybe we move the piano 3 feet. What the heck, one day, right? But there's things we can do as we see people who are in need. We know that if, an elderly individual is walking with a cane, very slowly and having difficulty, we know we have wheelchairs here. Would there be anything wrong with introducing yourself to that individual and letting them know that we'd be happy to push them to their seat just so they'd be more comfortable? It's a change in the culture and the mindset of, what could I do? How do I get a step ahead of the individuals we serve? Sometimes it feels like, the experience starts as long as you get into church, as long as you make it through the parking lot, and me specifically, I just think about the kids and the diaper bags and the stroller and, all that stuff. And then you kind of take a deep breath, but what if we had people out there helping, And so the challenge again, as we think in our own specific ministries, what could we do? Father mentioned that individual who instead of gave him the instructions or the directions, actually walked them exactly where they needed to go. So in our own ways, we need to think about that and do that. I had the pleasure of canceling a credit card a couple weeks ago because of a fraud alert. And the gentleman who first answered the phone was very helpful and nice and took my, whatever it is, 16 or 18 digit number and was sure to put me in touch with the right person. The next person was a little bit less polite and got the same amount of numbers, they didn't change. And the third person, and you wonder, you got the numbers. What if you told the person ahead of you, so I didn't have to do it again? There must be some sort of system. So in what ways in our own ministries are we doing that? In what ways do we have that redundancy?
I want to mention too, the reason that we didn't ask ushers to sit over here and greeters to sit over here, and it's because we're all part of the hospitality ministry. We're all pulling in the same direction on the same team. So if a greeter notices an elderly person walking through the door that needs a wheelchair, and they don't know where it is, instead of saying, well, hey, you could go ask the usher, you know, they're over there, you could walk with them to the usher and say, you know, hey, Don, you know, this person needs a, you know, a wheelchair, where could I find it, or could you help me find it? But to work together as that team, because we're not, you know, there's overlap. We're not individual ministries, and my duties stop once you get past the entryway. Like, that's not how we need to all be pulling together and helping each other out. So I think that goes to anticipating needs as well and being able to help. And the other thing is, you know, we talked a couple times about needing more manpower. And one of the things that we're gonna ask you guys to do is to recruit. You know, you see the same people walking through the door all the time, they're smiling and they're happy. Give them that personal invitation. Say, hey, I see you here every week, you'd be great at this. Would you like to come join us, you know, and help us, you know, be an usher or a greeter and coffee and donuts, whatever it is. Because as much as I like speaking before Mass at every Mass, it shouldn't come from me up there. It should be a personal invitation from you guys, the people that they're seeing, you know, as they walk through the door every week. So, yes, absolutely.
Part of anticipating needs is knowing that at 39 minutes of on a Sunday of conversations, you have to start passing chocolate around. So I don't know about throwing them around, maybe just politely going around. There was too much trick or treating in my house. So when you're in an allergy house with kids, there's very little benefits, but here's a benefit. So the idea is, what can we do to wow a guest, a visitor, a parishioner? So the other part of this curriculum is providing information. This is also one that is difficult because sometimes we say, well, we don't have the time, or, you know, I would have told them this, you know, I would have told them why we're not letting anybody pass the velvet rope right now, but, you know, do we have the time? I don't know. But when we have individuals coming into our home, imagine if we had a cocktail party or a dinner party, and you told everyone, don't use that bathroom. You just put a sign, don't use it. Okay, is there any information, you know, is the toilet running, is something bad happened in there? But we kind of do that, you know, in larger organizations, you know. We might change a rule functionally because it makes sense somewhere, but when we don't provide the information to the individuals that are coming into our home, it kind of diminishes the experience. Last year I had to go away for a couple of days for business, and I had a call from my wife that she found a couple of mice in our basement. We had a hole in the wall and it was a mess. And I thanked her for the information. It was kind of like, geez, you know, that stinks. Well, I came home a couple of days later and emptied my laundry, and she said, could you take your suitcase down to the utility room in the basement? And to do that in my house, you gotta go down and turn the corner, and I was gonna put it away. And as I'm walking out, she said, hey, watch your step. I always watch my step because with little kids, there's stuff everywhere. She didn't tell me to watch my step because there was 15 mouse traps all over. So I was like, oh, you know, I set like 5 of them off. A little bit more information would have been helpful. You know? So the question is, what mouse traps are we setting in our organization? You know, where do we have some opportunity to provide a little bit more information to the individuals we serve so it doesn't feel like we're just not being hospitable? Because in an effort to be radical, we're going to start trying new things, and they're not all going to work, you know, but we'll have ideas. The best thing we can do is provide the information so that people understand our motivation and why we're doing. We talked about respect, and I want to just remind us, and we are obviously a respectful group. That's why we're here. But I can't stress enough that we're here because we belong and we're confident and we want to be. We have to know how vulnerable the individuals, you know, that we encounter every day, every Mass, every event are, or how they could be. And no matter what they may appear to be, I think knowing that and not only seeing Jesus in everyone we meet, but being Jesus to everyone we meet, I think it's extremely valuable to continue to remind ourselves that we may be, you know, representing Christ in a very specific and deliberate way to somebody without even knowing it. In third-party perspective, the environment, much like measuring friendliness from afar, I think being aware of not only keeping our environments and our spaces clean, but being aware that perception is reality, right? So people don't need to know exactly what we're doing or why we're doing it to make a judgment from, a third-party perspective. If we look at this individual, we probably can make an assumption, right? He's crying, so he's sad, right? Or he's crying because it's the happiest day of his life at his daughter's wedding, right? The point is that individuals that we serve, parishioners and guests and visitors, will make assumptions about everything we're doing. So understanding that the third-party perspective, when we talk about delivering service excellence and radical hospitality, is of the utmost importance, right? So the question is, now what? What do we do? I think I've challenged us, I hope I've challenged us in a short period of time just to see the little things that we do differently so that in aggregate, by just being friendlier and maybe introducing ourselves and asking other people their names and using them in dialogue and providing information and anticipating needs and respecting in a new committed way the individuals that we serve. I think that now what is just to keep pushing ourselves and providing feedback to the leadership. What if we did this? What if we did hit every windshield in the winter? What if we had 75 umbrellas? Notwithstanding the economic impact of any of this, but what if? What if we had those umbrellas for when it was rainy so no one had to go out and get wet, right? What if instead of having 15 people at St. Maria Gorati in Christmas and Easter in the parking lot, we had 25 people every Mass? Now, it's huge, it's radical, but that's the effort, right? So to me, my commitment is, in my mind, is if we think about every parishioner, every guest, every time, no exceptions, no excuses. How would we change our behavior? So that's it for me. I appreciate your time and look forward to working with you all moving forward.